आपका नेम प्लेट क्यों नहीं है? गिर गया, आपका भी गिर गया, उनका भी नेम प्लेट गिरा, सबका नेम प्लेट गिर गया। इनके भी नेम प्लेट्स नहीं है, इनके भी नेम प्लेट्स नहीं है, यहाँ पे किसी के नेम प्लेट्स नहीं है सर। वाओ।
Why did Delhi police ask their cops to wear the uniform?
वो बेहोश पेशेंट के ऊपर चढ़ के गए, उन्हें डंडा मारा मेरी आंखों के सामने। जब हम लोग की जान जाती है ना तब पता चलता है इंसानियत मर चुकी है।
ये देखिए लड़ाई देखिए, ये देखिए किस तरीके से मार रहे हैं। ये लाठी चार्ज देख सकते हैं आप यहाँ पर।
Can any police decide to lathi charge whenever they want? And what are the laws that protect the police as well when they are addressing the protesters? Hello everyone, welcome to Vajiram and Ravi's Flash News. My name is Shubhangi Singh, and in today's session we are not just going to focus and understand the brutality and the security that we saw on the 20th July protest of Sansad Chalo, but we will also be looking into the accountability aspect, that how multiple personnel, police personnel did not have their uniform on, how multiple RAF personnel did not have their name badges put on, and when the questions were asked, the results have come. The Delhi police has clearly asked its personnel to wear the uniform to ensure that the accountability factor that was missing at the protest is finally brought in. But this comes after 3 days of that protest, and this leads to bigger question. Is there any legal backing to it? Is this something that police has been doing? Is this something police has the discretion to do on its own? And what are the more intricacies, the basic factors that we as citizens should also know? So let us understand the whole situation, starting from the very fact that when we are talking about the 20th July protest, what did we see? That there were multiple police personnel who were seen in plain clothing, multiple RAF, that is Rapid Action Force personnel, who were seen in uniform yet without the name badges. Now this raises a lot of questions. First of all, who are these people? If let us say they are from Delhi police, then why are they not in uniforms? What are the kind of powers they have? And when we are talking about powers, we can clearly see the usual lathis which are present with, the fiber ones which are present with police, are in their hands. And when we see this, we have to question that what is the legal backing, the constitutional backing behind it. So the first thing that we have to understand, that when we are talking about crowd control, before that also this is something very normally seen with police, that they can of course appear in plain clothes. When we are talking about the legality of it, police also has clarified on the fact that they do get deployed in normal plain clothes so as to ensure that they have the intelligence inputs, they are able to understand that what is the mood of the crowd and give directions based on it, ensure that they are amidst the people, so understand if there is some sort of threat emerging and other factors. Now amidst this, a proper operational justification has also come out, that why they were deployed for the reasons I have just mentioned, but there has been an operational justification also, that this is something that is very common in political rallies, this is something very common when we are looking at huge crowds, and whenever there is an extremely sensitive situation related to law and order. So of course when we are looking into the fact, if this is happening for the first time, then the clear answer here is no. This is pretty much a standard practice that police does in order to ensure that they have intelligence inputs, they are able to gauge the mood of the crowd, they are able to understand the level of threat and other technicalities associated with their work. And this also comes in very handy when we are looking at elements which might target the police also. But this is all on one side. This absolutely comes in the opposite direction when we are talking about people in plain clothes taking action against general public, lathi charging them and taking actions which are not common for the general public. So how does the public know who is police and who is not? And do they not have the right to know this? So how exactly we distinguish between all of this? So when we are trying to understand the legal backing of this, first we have to understand that if we have anything about all of this in our law. So for this, we will be looking into Bharatiya Nagarik Suraksha Sanhita, and when we look at it, we clearly get to see there is no explicit provision of plain dressing, and there is no explicit provision in Delhi Police Act as well. So these two comprehensive documents that we have, one is a proper legislation, and then this is what we follow as a clear code. This is something that clearly shows that there is no explicit mention. Now, when we are talking about the explicit mention, we have to understand that this explicit mention is specifically related to removing the name tags, removing or concealing the identity, or operating without identification. When we look at Bharatiya Nagarik Suraksha Sanhita and a proper legislation, that is Delhi Police Act, what we get to see that there is no explicit provision which allows that there should be removing or nameplates, that there should be concealment of identity, or there should be any hiding about the accountability. But at the same time, we also clearly understand that certain situations might lead to, and that is why what we have understood here, that this is a very common practice. And in this very context, because it is a common practice, Supreme Court, our apex court, has already given a very important judgment back in 1997 itself, that the officers who are making any kind of arrest or taking actions, they have to wear clear and visible identification. Their name tags should be displaying, and their identity should be officially recorded. But when we are looking at this part, this talks about the dimension of accountability, which comes from our fundamental rights. So when we are talking about fundamental right of freedom to speech and expression, when we are talking about the fundamental right to protest, when we are talking about fundamental right against arrest and detentions, this is where the accountability comes in. But when we were talking about how commonly it is seen, this is where we have to accept that this is the other side, where we are looking at the security dimension. And that is why in this particular situation, we have security versus accountability situation right in front of us. Now, this is where another big thing that we need to talk about when we are looking at Lathi charge, one of the biggest and the most talked about thing of this protest. How legal is this? Can a police person decide to go for Lathi charge whenever, with whoever they want? What are your thoughts? What do you think? Is this allowed or not allowed? We will be just discussing this. Now, when we are talking about this, again, our reference point has to be the law. So, our law nowhere at all explicitly uses this term of Lathi charge, also goes by the name baton charge. This is something that came into practice, especially in India, from the British times. That is, we have commonly seen where Britishers have resorted to such extreme forces in order to curb any sort of dissent and get whatever they want to be done. Now then, if there is no mention of Lathi charge in our law, then how come this is present in terms of practice? Now, what Indian law permits is use of reasonable force. Now, to an extent, this might seem like a vague term, but based on the law, it should be proportionate. So, if the means are failing, for example, if the police is making the announcement and if that is not working out, then they have to move to the next step. So, it has to be proportionate, one after another. I have to give you an example here. If we are talking about Ramlila Maidan incident that we saw in 2012, this is when peaceful protesters were sleeping and then Lathi charge happened. So, that is when Supreme Court clearly intervened that when we are talking about reasonable force, it needs to be proportionate. And that is when Supreme Court condemned that particular act as well. And the second factor that is associated with reasonable force is necessity. That how much this was needed from the perspective of security, from the perspective of law and order and more. And if this both are not justificable of the action that is taken, then that is not allowed. So in this, there is a lot of bandwidth possible of the actions that can be taken, including lathi charge. Police can definitely ensure that they are justifying it from their perspective, which is also happening right now, where they are telling, first of all, that when we are talking about lathi charge, it came from the fact to control the violence that was unfolding. The concealment of identity is related to protect the personnel from any sort of retaliation, to protect them from any sort of online harassment, and also to ensure that there is no targeting by violent groups. So there is a very clear perspective also coming from the police side. But when we look at the accountability side that we have been discussing for long now, we clearly understand that this anonymity which facilitates the security also hinders the civil liberty. It weakens the public trust. It is very difficult to identify if there is any misconduct is happening by an accused personnel. It reduces the accountability and also it absolutely complicates the legal action. For example, if any police personnel has misconducted, that is when if there is no identification, the person cannot be pointed out. It might help in the security matters, but civil liberty remains absolutely compromised. At max, that thought would be against that particular police segment, but no particular individual would be able to identify. And if there is no identification, the accountability goes out of the picture as well. And this leads to a very simple core question, that when we are talking about state power, and especially if we look at it, the coercive state power, can it be exercised in the name of anonymity? Can it be exercised anonymously? Because what our law allows is something very different. Our law says clearly the rules which govern the use of force during process, they are very clear, that authorities first have to attempt persuasion and dialogue. They have to issue proper lawful orders to disperse. They are allowed to use force, but they have to start with minimum force. But what we saw was brutal and it was hidden under the veil of anonymity. And if at all the escalation from the end of police personnel is required, it escalates gradually. The firearms come only in a situation where this is the last resort. And I've already talked to you about the Ramlila Maidan case, where Supreme Court had to intervene and tell that the use of force neither was necessary nor it was proportionate. And when we look at this incidence of anonymity of the officers, the police personnel, this is not something present in our democracy only. This is something troubling the democracy across the world. For example, when we are looking at United States, there have been issues over masked or plainclothes federal officers who are misconducting, misusing their position. So in order to address this for the long term, not just this protest, in the long term, police personnel and this department is the one which should ensure security, which should make us feel that we don't need to fear them. And if that has to happen, then it is about balancing. Operational effectiveness definitely should not be compromised. Officer safety should not be compromised. But same goes for the civil liberties, including transparency and democratic accountability. Real reasons need to come out so that citizens do feel a real connect to the state, to the nation, and as a member of that state, they are standing right where they want their civil liberties to also be delivered. Now, what are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comment section. I'll be leaving you here with a very basic prelims practice question which is coming from the topic that I have just taught. So I think you will be able to answer this. Also, let me know the way forward to this situation. What do you think can be done better to ensure, especially for a country like India which has such a vast machinery, how technology can help here, how citizens can help here, and how the police personnel can also address this situation. Now that was all from my side. Thank you so much.